and welcome to Legal Affairs. My name is Diamond Liddy, and I'm the public defender of the 19th Judicial Circuit. And we are going to be talking today about lots of stuff with Alice Kenyon. But most importantly, we're going to talk about a family forum coming up, actually in March,
yes,
this month,
spring break.
that will be talking about all kinds of topics regarding children, families, etc. But let's first introduce you. Alice Kenyon,
yes,
correct?
That's right.
And Alice, you work for Port St. Lucie Police Department.
Yes.
How long have you been with them now?
It will be completing 9 years the end of this month. I'll be starting my 10th year.
Oh, good. Well, congratulations. And your actual title is?
Juvenile specialist.
Okay. What does that mean?
So we used to, when I first arrived, actually, we had a juvenile unit which consisted of myself and 3 or 4 juvenile detectives. Well, then we had the downsizing, and so at the moment, I'm really the only specific juvenile person, in addition to the chief, because he's the chair of the Juvenile Advisory Board.
Right, which is pretty cool.
Yes, that's very cool. So, but as far as phone calls that come in, from parents who are distraught, something's happening. The kid used to get all A's and now he's all D's. So I meet with families in that sense of how to just help the communication and help the kid to begin to be, thinking, well, what's important here, impressing the friends, or, who am I and where am I going? But the bulk of my job has to do with the pre-arrest diversion that actually Mickey McMurtry started, and it has to do with kids who have broken the law. It's the first time. It is a misdemeanor. And they admit to having broken the law, and they want to fix it. That sensation of, oh, I should have never done that. I always tell the kids, it's great fun right up until you get arrested.
Right.
Then it's no more fun.
No.
So if you can think about all that, is it going to be fun? Whereas, the thought of it is great fun, but maybe I better not do it because.
Well, and it's funny you're talking about that, because I'm embroiled in a situation now where obviously, the juvenile brain and all of that, and all the science of that comes into play. And not my opinion, the opinion of the experts is exactly what you're talking about. The juvenile brain, is different than an adult, and the impulsivity, control, all that stuff. And you're right. That's what happens with kids. They're in a situation, and it's a lot of fun up until law enforcement arrives or whatever. But they don't think that far ahead.
No.
And so as a catalyst of all of that, Port St. Lucie Police Department years ago, well, 9 years ago now, started a lot of these diversion programs to kind of address those things on a minor level, obviously. But is it working?
It is absolutely working.
Okay.
Our recidivism rate, like I said, I've been there 9 years, and every year but one, our recidivism rate is 2%. One year we had 10 kids who, got into trouble again, and so that bumped it up to 3%. But I can tell you that nationally, the good news is this diversion youth court specifically, is a national and even now global. There's a youth court in France. But nationally, our statistics for youth court are 6 to 9% recidivism, which is still fabulous.
Right.
I come from a city where 50% is considered good. I was always being told, well, Alice, you can't save them all, kind of thing. So 50%, it's good. But 2%. I have to be very proud of that.
My gosh.
It's fabulous.
And is this does Port St. Lucie Police Department, as far as their pre-arrest diversion tools, is it just youth court? Is it more than youth court, or is youth court primarily
we actually, in fact, I meant to bring the statistics with me, but we have a pretty even split between youth court, which is the courtroom setting and the taking the oath, and the attorneys are the ones that ask the questions, or the judge can ask questions, and the jury cannot ask questions in the courtroom, to a second venue, which is called peer review.
Okay.
And
let's talk about that, too.
The outcome basically will be the same, that the kid will be, quizzed by his peers and then also sentenced by his peers to do some assignments, he or she, to do some assignments, and then when they complete all the assignments, which can include counseling and probation with their school resource officer, as well as written work, reading, community service, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
But once they complete that those assignments, then we close the case inside the police department. There is no state record. There is no any kind of record. It is considered a referral. They fix the damage, done. So half of the case, I'd say 50%, maybe just a little over 50%, go to youth court. The other half go to peer review, which, like I said, the idea is the same, but it's a little more. I don't know if intimate is the word, but everybody on it's a panel of peers, panel of kids between 12 and 18.
Okay.
And they all get to ask questions of the defendant as well as the defendant's parent or guardian.
Okay.
And so the kids, the kids who volunteer for me really like that venue better because everybody gets to ask a question, or if this person asks a question, that makes me think of something, so I want to kind of pile on top of that. Whereas, like I said, in the courtroom, you can be on the jury, you can be thinking of a bunch of questions, but if that attorney does not ask, the prosecutor or the defense does not ask that question, you're going back into the deliberations without your answer to your question. So everybody seems to like the peer review better.
Well, let's back up a minute because I got all kinds of questions. Okay, so you got peer review in youth court. In youth court, depending on the sentence, do they have a record at that point?
No.
Okay,
no,
so both of them?
as long as they close. Complete all their assignments, and we close the case inside. The only people who know about it are the family and the police department.
Okay.
So nobody can look it up on juvenile history, unless that family tells somebody,
Right. Okay. So it's both non-judicial, if you will, punishment or what's the word I'm looking for?
Restoring, fixing, because we really don't when I'm training the volunteers, it is not about punishment.
Right.
Because kids are not hypocrites. They don't want to be hypocrites. They don't want to go in there and, I'm punishing you because I'm better than you, or any of that sense. They're saying, and in peer review, they get the chance to say, you punched this kid because he was bothering you all this time. That happened to me. And this is how, I handled. One girl even has said, I was bullied for a couple of years. My parents had enough. They pulled me out, and now I am doing homeschool. Or other kids will say, I was bullied, or I see it going on, and this is how we intervene. You can talk to teachers. You can talk to the dean. You can talk to, in many cases, you can talk to the principal. In many cases, you can talk to the school resource officer. So that you have options. You don't have to hit somebody and get yourself arrested.
Well, let's start with peer review, Alice. Where do you get that panel of children?
Yeah, that's really important because it benefits the defendant, obviously, if they don't have a record, but it also benefits the volunteers.
Okay.
Because all of a sudden, these kids which kind of
empowered
leads into, and leads into the forum that we're going to be talking about, too. These kids are looking at, maybe I would like to be a lawyer. Well, then they get started. Well, I don't think I want to be a lawyer because you're always on the spot, arguing the case. Maybe I'd like to be the clerk of court, though. Yeah. Or maybe I'd like to have this job or that job or, whatever. There's a lot going on in the courtroom besides the lawyer. So, it's helpful to them. It also is helpful to the volunteer because they're learning a lot about the law.
Okay, now you're talking about the youth court, though, not the peer review.
Both. All those volunteers, because in peer review, that panel is, for the most part, the attorneys. from
Okay.
youth court, but there are also kids who
Okay.
are going to work their way. Everybody has to start as a juror, then they can work their way up to being on the panel, because then
Okay.
they get to start asking questions.
And the judge, is that a
That is a volunteer.
Also a
adult.
child?
No, that's an adult.
Okay.
So right now, last year we went through a bunch of, we went to lunch with the American Bar Association of Port St. Lucie.
Right.
So we had many, many lawyers coming, to be our judge.
Okay.
This year we're kind of going through all of our hierarchy. So our lieutenants right now are getting to be the judge, which gets support inside of our police department.
Right.
If the officers see their lieutenant participating, that encourages them. Although we do have very good statistics too of our officers. We have 61%, I want to say, of our police department, of our officers of road patrol referring to us too.
Okay. And again, I'm jumping around, and I
I am jumping
apologize.
around, yeah.
But procedurally, I want to get this straight. A child, law enforcement is called to the scene.
Yes.
A child hits another child, battery. Okay. Does that law enforcement officer on the scene make the determination that it should go to peer review or youth
Yes.
court? Okay,
Yes.
so they don't take them to the detention center or okay,
No.
okay. So it's and is everyone in Port St. Lucie Police Department trained?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes, in their handbook during their field training period, they read that when you get to the scene, these are your options.
Okay.
If the kid's giving you the runaround, wasn't me, you got the wrong person, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah,
right.
and there's going to have to be an investigation, well then, yeah, they're probably going to go to the detention center.
Right.
But like I said, if the officer gets there and the kid is like, oh, no,
Yeah.
I should not have done that, why did I do that, I'm so sorry.
Right.
Then and the parents, are willing to come to the scene and willing to
Right.
support the kid through the program and all that. Then the officer, and it's the first arrest, first time the kid has broken the law, then they will refer them to me.
Okay.
Even in the sense, you mentioned the detention center, even in the few and far between where the parent is not available to come to the scene, our officer we've worked it out with the detention center, actually our officer can take the kid and the form referral to me to the detention center, and the detention center will send them to me, will call the parent.
Right.
Say they call, our officer called the parent, well the parent's in Miami working,
Right.
So it's not, the officer can't stay there with the kid for 3 hours or
Right,
whatever.
right.
But we have worked it out, and we really appreciate that the detention center is willing to do that. Hold that kid until that parent comes, have the parent sign the referral to me, and then the kid and the parent go home, and they show up. One of the benefits of the the referral to me is that this incident may have taken place today, and then Monday the kid and the parent are in front of me already answering. I'm already giving them one assignment because I've learned from my volunteers that they really love that book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, and they say, oh, everybody has to read this book. So since I already knew
Was that written by? Is that written by
the son of Stephen Covey wrote the one for adults.
Right.
And Sean wrote this book when he was like, 17, 19, something like that. So it really is written from a kid's perspective.
Oh my goodness! I didn't know there was.
And I can tell you that since that book, which has sold over 25 million copies, he has written a book called 7 Habits of Happy Kids, which is for younger kids, the 7, 8, 9-year-old group.
I didn't even know it because now I mean, I've written, read Covey's book, Dale Carnegie, all those,
Right.
highly effective, blah blah blah. But I didn't know the habits of the highly effective people,
Right,
adults,
right.
whatever. Is a wonderful book,
It
but I
is.
didn't know that there was a.
Yes.
Oh my goodness!
So
Okay.
this kid, he's pushing 30 now, but anyway, when he was younger, in his teens, he broke those habits down into, well, what does that mean to me as a kid? and put it in the terms of, you know, teenagers. And what is it? What are they facing? They're not facing climbing the career path just yet. You know, they're facing, well, what are my peers doing about this? What are they saying? What about dating? What about this? What about that?
Well, you know, what about school?
And what about school?
Yeah.
And how do I
and
do
college
and
and
college and you know all these things that come up. And I have many kids who say, well, I don't like to read. And they come back and they say, you know, that's a really good book. I don't like to read, but that's a really good book.
Oh, God. And who wrote
Sean Covey.
Yeah, I know Sean Covey wrote that. You said 7 Habits
I'm sure
of the Happy.
Wrote them all. Happy
Oh,
Kids.
And
then there's another one called The 6 Most Important Decisions You'll Ever Make. This young guy has written about 6 books, and they're all big sellers.
Over the top. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
Yes.
Well, no. Okay. But now we're really,
I know.
you know, it's
I'm
like,
so sorry.
but no, we got to answer the question, and you started to, and I interrupted you, so I'm sorry, Alice. How do you pick the people the kids, the young adults who are on the peer review panel, or that are on the youth?
Initially, I went around to, you know, all the high schools and asked for volunteers. But actually, at high school, by the time they're 16, 17, they want to be getting jobs. And my initiative takes place after school. We have the volunteers come at 3:45. Well, the high school kids are done school. They want to be having a job, you know, after school.
Right.
But if they get started when they first start in 9th grade, you know, 13, 14 years old, then I've had kids who volunteered for me for 5, 6 years.
Wow. Okay.
And then went, you know, and got scholarships and whatever. Excuse me. But, you know, it's word of mouth at this point.
Okay. So do they submit an application to you?
Yes, they have to fill out an application. Okay. They shouldn't be a kid who has committed, you know, a bunch of crimes and is on probation and so forth, because that's not fair to have them judging, you know, kids who are, you know, going to change their mind about, you know, what their behavior is. But they are kids who are either interested in becoming a lawyer, or they want to help their peers. They think it's interesting. Then they bring their friend, hey, I'm doing this really interesting thing. Wouldn't you like to do this as well? Excuse me. And so, yeah, it is word of mouth. Sometimes I've gone to churches and recruited kids there.
Right. So, and the panel is made up of
kids from 12 to up to 18. Once they're 18, they really should be stopping.
Okay, and then of course, as far as the youth court, it's the same process. You check their you know, and you know something we need to talk about that I don't know if the public is aware of, but it's a component of this pre-arrest diversion and the great things y'all are doing at the department is that as we have gotten tough on crime, which I'm certainly not criticizing, but as we have in the state of Florida, we have also gotten tougher on crime in the juvenile arena. And it used to be back in the day, you know, prior arrests, prior incidents when you were a juvenile, they weren't even counted, you know. I mean, I'm talking back in the day. I'm talking about 30 years ago.
The records were sealed.
Records were sealed. You know, if you did something as a juvenile, it just didn't matter. It wouldn't haunt you. It wouldn't, you know, ever hurt your chances of becoming a nurse or going into law enforcement or the armed services, anything like that. Things are different now. And the public needs to be aware, and juveniles need to be aware. Yes. You know, be careful, because it can be a minor thing, but if you are convicted and that's on your record, boy, it can haunt you for the rest of your life. It
really can. You know, along the lines of what you're talking about, it used to be, you know, that if you got yourself in trouble, you know, you'd go to court and the judge would suggest, well, why don't you get yourself into the military and get yourself straightened out? Okay, yeah, well, if I'd rather go to the military than go to jail. But now the military comes to the police department to get the records to see, has this kid been arrested?
Oh, yeah.
And they're very, tough on drugs. They're very tough on, a lot of things.
And so it's not, well, if you do something before you're 18, it's not going to affect you. No more. I mean,
and I can tell you that a lot of kids who do get in trouble for this, that, and the other, you say, well, what do you see yourself doing 10 years from now? Oh, I want to be an officer. I want to be law enforcement.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Well, please think about that and how getting into trouble is going to affect your chances of that. So I look at as an education program for the kid and for the parent.
Right.
You really need to be sitting down, with your children. Find the time. I know it's hard, but find the time to sit down with children and talk about, well, these are all the paths. Getting arrested goes to jail, and then the things are over,
Yeah.
But then there's all these other paths. Yeah, there's medicine, there's law, there's teaching, there's creativity, dancing. We just came out of the Olympics and stuff like that. Wow, the training that goes into that, sports and arts and stuff like that for kids. So help the kids to find out what are their interests and their talents and stuff like that, and support them to investigate, research, what is that about. Now, for myself, I volunteered in a hospital when I was probably, 12 or 13 years old.
Right.
And once I started seeing people come out of, post-op with the tubes and the drains and all that, I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
So that was important knowledge for me. I thought, well, if you're a girl, you become a nurse or a teacher. Well, I found out I cannot work in medical because I can't tolerate it. So that was good information for me. So getting kids out there, investigating, the possibilities, the destinations, at a young age is a good thing, because there may be some things that they're going to have to eliminate. They can't be going through, 12 years of school, I'm going to be a basketball coach, only to find out,
that they don't have, they don't have any of the skills to lead or anything like that.
Right.
Well, and we've got about 5 minutes left, so I want to get to this family forum, but you said something before the show, I think you may have said it during, that, the two questions, who am I and where am I going? I just want, tell me your philosophical slant on that just briefly before we talk about the forum.
We talk about self-esteem or this or that, and we can really ruin a kid, actually, by telling them, oh, you're wonderful just because you breathe the air. Kids don't believe that. They know that you're lying to them. But if you help them to discover, well, who am I? Well, you do this well, and you do that well, and wow, doing, being funny or whatever is connected to a job called a comedian.
Yeah, right.
But how do you do that? What's the path for that? So complimenting kids and recognizing in kids, which is what Kids in Hope wants adults to be doing, and they're collaborating on that forum with, help the kid to connect to who they are. Because if we as adults remember back to when we were, 8 years old, 10 years old, whatever, excuse me, and somebody would say, wow, you're really good at that. We may not have thought about that already, but we hear from somebody, oh, I'm good at that. I am? Oh, then that starts to help me to define who I am.
Right.
So early on, kids should be helped to identify who they are.
And then,
because that will prevent some of the problems. It doesn't make other people not bully them, but it does prevent them from buying into what that other person might be saying about them, which pulls them down.
And then if they determine who they are, then they can go to the next step of where am I going?
Right.
I know who I am. I'm confident in my skin. I have a certain level of belief in myself, even at a young age, and therefore let me go on the a path towards that. And it may change, but now I love those two. I love those two questions. Okay, now we have less than 5 minutes. Okay, there's a family forum, and by the way, Alice, if somebody who's watching this show wants to get involved, a young person or a parent or anything to help they can call you at Port St. Lucie
They can call me about, yes, volunteering, and they can also call me with questions about the forum,
Okay.
who should come, or, whatever, at the police department. I can give you the number if
Go
this
ahead.
is the right time to do that. 772-344-4087. That's a
Okay.
direct line right to my desk. But really, everybody who has kids, and once it's during spring break, so it's Wednesday, March 26th, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock
Okay.
in City Hall, Port St. Lucie
at City Hall. Okay.
Rosso and Port St. Lucie Boulevard, right behind City, right off that corner with the fountain.
Okay.
And, people with kids, I would say, kids who can pay attention, so that's probably, 9, 10 years old on up through high school. And, there will be people there talking about how parents can help kids. There will be people from PACE talking about, the value of girls having an education that really is gender specific for girls. There will be people from the college talking about IRSC is the most wonderful college, I think, in the world.
I know. Oh, I agree. I agree.
Because it has the academic, the humanities, but it also has real, fundamental training for jobs. The medical field. They have the police academy there. They have the firefighters academy. They have, I can't remember now, all but when I look through their catalog, I am so impressed. So we have Mrs. White coming from the school to talk about that.
And I saw on your special guest list, too, someone how to help Lila White is also, I guess, also from IRSC,
yes.
who's going to talk about how to help kids plan for college.
Right.
So this is kind of, I guess, the sense I'm getting from your flyer, Alice, is that it's not, how to keep your kids out of trouble, which is so often, and those are great, great forums and great things to attend. But this is more how to guide your child for their future, to deter, like what you said earlier.
And, getting kids involved in things. People, you hear a lot of times, well, there's nothing to do. But actually there are. And here comes summer, and there's loads of things to do over the summer. And so I have Officer Wilson coming from PAL, Police Athletic League, although it's really Police Activities League. And he also is in charge of the Police Explorers. So there are places, activities and Police Explorers where kids can begin to find out, oh, well, I never thought about that as a job, or I never thought about that something that I would like to do, but let me, investigate. And it's not all some of the things at Police Athletic League you do have to pay for, but it's not all that expensive. And I can tell you it's more expensive than, you said about going into trouble. It's it's less expensive than having to, hire a lawyer if your kid does get into trouble.
Absolutely. Well, again, we got about 30 seconds, Alice. It's Wednesday, March 26th. 1 to 3. It's free.
It is free, and we will have an intermission with refreshments.
Okay. And you've got 6 great speakers.
And Kids at Hope is collaborating with us.
Okay. And they, I assume they're open for questions at the end, too.
Yes. Each speaker will speak for maybe, 10 minutes or so, but there will be questions, and we want to have, kids and parents participate. I'm sure we're going to be doing the Pledge of Allegiance. We're also going to be doing the Pledge of a Treasure Hunter and the Kids Pledge.
Okay. And Alice, thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Donna.
I hope everybody comes. This will be great.
I hope so, too. Thank you very much for having me on.
Okay. Great job.